first, we're going to look at how to subtract two signed numbers. And the rule is keep, change, change. So which means when we have a subtraction problem, we're going to change the minus to plus and also change the sign of the number following the minus sign. So this is what I did here. I follow the rule, which is keep the first number, -4, and change the minus to plus. And then immediately I'll change the sign of the number following the minus sign. So if it's minus, I will change it to plus. If you are given a plus here, you will change it to minus. So we have to do two sign changes that will not change, that will still give us the equivalent solution. So we have -4 plus +4. Now, plus +6. Now we're going to use the addition rule for sign numbers. So my negative number treat it as debt, $4 in debt, and positive number treat it as credit. So we have $6 credit. So apparently, whether the answer is negative or positive, it depends on whether we have more credit or more debt. So in this case, since we have more credit, 6 is bigger than 4. So the answer will be credit, which means it's plus. And then next we're going to see how much more credit then do we have than debt. So we have $6 credit compared to $4 debt, and that is 2. So we have the answer +2, so $6 credit. So this is how we subtract numbers, and also how to subtract and how to add sign numbers. Now in the next question we have exponents. So we need to make sure we understand the difference between the one with parentheses and the without a parenthesis. So if we have a pair of parentheses, treat this as a box or package. So which means the minus sign and 3, they are together. So when we do, both of them have exponent 2, and which means 2 copies. But when we don't have the minus sign, in the parentheses, so for example, we don't have parentheses, we are only going to, so we consider this minus sign and the 3, they are separated, they're not together. So we're going to do 2 copies of only the number 3, not the minus sign. The minus sign will be brought down because we are given a subtraction there, so we do have to bring that minus sign down. But when we do 3, we're only going to do 3 squared, which means 2 copies of 3. But if we have a pair of parentheses, that is considered, the minus sign and 3, they're considered together, like as a package. So when we do 2 copies, we have to do 2 copies of everything in the package, in the box, in the parentheses. So it's going to be 2 copies of -3. So notice the difference here is the minus sign, whether you're going to do 2 copies or not going to do 2 copies of it. Okay, so again, without a parenthesis, you're only going to take 2 copies of the number digit, not the minus sign. Only the one that's closest. Anything in front of it is treated as separate. But if we have a pair of parentheses, everything inside the parentheses are considered together. They're like a package. So when we do 2 copies, we have to do 2 copies of everything inside the package, the parentheses. Not only 3, but also the minus sign. So now we're going to use the rule for multiplying sign numbers. We know a negative number times a positive number, it's going to give us negative. A negative times a negative will give us a positive, because opposite of this times means of debt is going to give us credit. So that's why when we multiply 2 negatives, we get a credit. But we have to be careful when we add 2 negatives, we actually still going to get negative, because we're not doing opposite of debt. We're doing debt plus debt, which gives us a larger debt. So that's why addition of 2 negative numbers will still give us negative, but multiplication of 2 negatives will give us positive. So using the rule, we're going to get negative times positive is -3, negative, but 3 times 3 is 9. But 2 negatives make a positive, and 3 times 3 is 9. And -9 plus 9 gives us 0. Now in this question, we got to follow the order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So first we're going to try to work out everything inside the parenthesis P. In the parenthesis, we have addition, -1 plus -2. So that means debt plus debt, we're going to get larger debt. So we're going to have -3 because first determine the sign, debt plus debt will still be debt. So the number is negative. And we combine the two debts we have, 1 plus 2, that gives us $3 debt. And next we're going to do multiplication. We also have a subtraction, but multiplication goes before subtraction. So make sure you do multiplication here, not the minus. So we have to do -2 times -3, that gives us a +6. And finally, we do 10 plus 6 to get 16. Now, this is just the rule for dividing sign numbers. We know negative divided by negative, just like negative times negative, we end up with a positive. So we get a positive, and then 32 divided by 4, that gives us 8. So the answer is +8 or just 8. Now, the next question we need to be careful is we have a bunch of numbers, but between them, we don't have any symbols. But we have a lot of parentheses. The reason we put parentheses here is to indicate the operations between them is multiplication. So it's times, 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 and times. If what I noticed, some students misunderstood the question as -1 plus 1. They're doing addition, subtraction, subtraction. But in that case, they will not be able to put any parentheses there. So notice the difference here. If I get rid of all the parentheses, it will be -1 plus 1 minus 1 minus 2 plus 3. But since we have all these parentheses, that means the operations between them are going to be multiplication times, not going to be addition or subtraction. So don't confuse these two questions. So to do this, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 multiplications to do, so we can work slowly. So first, let's multiply the first two numbers. Negative times positive is negative. 1 times 1 is 1. Actually, I went ahead and just multiplied the next two numbers. Negative times negative is positive, and 2 times 2 is 4. So now let's multiply these three numbers. So -1 times +4 is -4, because negative times positive is negative, and 1 times 4 is 4. And finally, we're going to do negative times positive is negative, and 4 times 3 is 12. So make sure you don't do addition or subtraction here. You actually will have to do multiplication because of all these parentheses.